Coming up on today's Philadelphia Eagles Now, we have another Eagles offensive coordinator search update, why the Eagles dodged a bullet, motivation for Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni going into 2026, given what has happened during this offensive coordinator search, and Vic Fangio recognized as one of the top assistant coaches in the National Football League. Let's begin here, though. Shout out to all of the real ones for your continued support of the show. But for those of you who haven't subscribed, I encourage you to do so right now. And I want to challenge ourselves here. Can we get to 144,000 subscribers today? All we need, 493 new subscribers to get to 144K. So if you love the birds, I want you to show me, hit that subscribe button and become a real one right now. Add a new candidate to the board for the Philadelphia Eagles. The Birds have requested to interview Bears offensive coordinator Declan Doyle. You think Ben Johnson's offense, very dynamic running scheme. Back on Black Friday, the Bears ran for 274 yards. Some of the passing concepts, very explosive in modern day. You think about what Ben Johnson did with the Detroit Lions. Those offenses were high octane. They were very fun and entertaining to watch. He was able to bring the best out of Jared Goff. A lot of those weapons, whether it be wide receivers, tight ends, running backs, put together really good seasons and performances. And Declan Doyle has learned under the likes of Ben Johnson, but also Sean Payton, another one of the best offensive minds in football. So, a lot of you might be wondering, Chase, who is Declan Doyle? We have talked about every candidate in depth who the Eagles have interviewed during their Eagles offensive coordinator search. And that's another reason why you got to hit that sub button. Nobody's doing it like we're doing it. So Doyle was hired last year as the NFL's youngest offensive coordinator. He is only 29 years old. It was Ben Johnson who hired him. Doyle previously served under Sean Payton, and that was with the New Orleans Saints and the Denver Broncos. And here's a look at Doyle's path and his resume. When he was at Iowa, he was coaching under Kirk Ferentz. And I like Ferentz as a coach. I think that his teams with Iowa, always physical. Now, their offenses are never blockbuster or highlight reel worthy, but that's one of the best overall football coaches of all time, in my opinion. And so he was a student assistant at Iowa from 2016 through 2018. And he caught the attention of Sean Payton when Payton was the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. And so Doyle was hired as an offensive assistant with the Saints. He was there in the Big Easy from 2019 through 2022. He followed Sean Payton to the Denver Broncos. That's notable to me because clearly Payton liked what Doyle did with the Saints as an offensive assistant, so much so that he wanted Doyle to follow him when he was building out that Bears staff. And so Doyle was the tight ends coach for Denver in 2023 and in 2024. And he became the Bears offensive coordinator in 2025. So the good with Doyle here, Sean Payton, Ben Johnson, two of the best overall offensive minds in the sport right now. So Doyle has been able to learn under both of them. And I like the flavor of what he could bring to Philadelphia potentially in that manner, right? Because you take some ingredients from Payton, you take some ingredients from Ben Johnson, it would be far different than what we've seen from the likes of Nick Sirianni's offense and certainly Kevin Patullo in 2025. I also really like here, this is an underrated talking point, how the Eagles have been willing to go outside of their comfort zone to interview some of these candidates who have much different offensive philosophies, who would call the game in a much different manner, who would force Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts to expand their horizons a little bit, get outside of their comfort zone, and bring nuances and intricacies and creative elements of offensive football to Philadelphia to get the best out of the likes of Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, hopefully, if he's on the team, Dallas Goedert, if the Eagles bring him back. Those things have been missing from the Eagles at times during this Nick Sirianni regime. Now, I'll give Sirianni credit, and I'll give Jalen Hurts credit. When the Eagles have had competent offensive coordinators, 2022 Shane Steichen, 2024 Kellen Moore, they went to the Super Bowls in both those years. And last year, they won a Super Bowl. So the Sirianni offense It has been proven to work. But if I have to watch hitch after hitch, no crossers, a lack of pre-snap motion, an offense that is predictable, this beautiful head of hair here for 34 years old, I'm going to rip it out. I need to see some changes on the offensive side of the football. The bad with Doyle, of course, it's obvious. He's very young, and he has never called plays before. And an inexperienced play caller with this veteran-laden win-now team, definitely a risk. Brian Johnson had never called plays before. Eagles didn't fare well in 2023. Kevin Patullo had never called plays before. Eagles were not good offensively in 2025 with the NFL's highest paid offensive unit. What is enticing, what is intriguing, though, is that with one of these creative young offensive minds, the ceiling and the potential for what the offense can do and accomplish is sky high. And if you hit on one of these guys, they could become a phenom as an offensive-minded play caller for Philadelphia. If Nick Sirianni doesn't work out, you're looking at the coach in waiting for Philadelphia. And Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie love finding the young, hip offensive mind. Lurie did it with Andy Reid. It worked out. 14 years, 5 NFC championship games, 1 Super Bowl appearance. The Eagles tried to strike gold with Chip Kelly. Didn't work out over the long haul, but year 1, the Eagles won the division and hosted a playoff game, and Chip Kelly's record was pretty good. Doug Peterson wasn't on a lot of radars. Year 2, won a Super Bowl. Nick Sirianni wasn't on a lot of radars. Year 2, made it to a Super Bowl. Year 4, won a Super Bowl. So a plus in this search. Yes, the Eagles have missed out on Mike McDaniel. They couldn't get him in the building. They missed out on Brian Dable. Those were their 2 top candidates. And it sucks that both those coordinators don't want to come or didn't want to come to Philadelphia. But going back to that point that I made about Doug Peterson and Nick Sirianni, Dougie P, Nick, they were not the number 1 options for the Eagles or any other teams during that coaching cycle. They were not hot names in 2016 and 2021. Worked out pretty damn well for the Eagles here. More breaking news on this front. Zac Robinson, who the Eagles interviewed last week, he was the first known candidate to interview for the Eagles OC job to replace Kevin Patullo. He's not going to Philadelphia. He's going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He is going to replace Josh Grizzard, who the Eagles also are showing some interest in. Ian Rappaport with this news this morning very early. New OC for Baker Mayfield. The Bucs are set to hire former Falcons offensive coordinator Zac Robinson as their new coordinator with a big push from Baker Mayfield. Baker wanted Zac Robinson. Knows him well. Played him twice inside the division. Robinson was the former Falcons offensive coordinator. I think the Eagles are dodging a bullet here. I was surprised to see a lot of people wanting the Eagles to hire Zac Robinson. Yes, he's from the Sean McVay tree. That's intriguing. Falcons were second in pre-snap motion rate last year. That would be refreshing to see. It's a plus that he's an experienced play caller. But a lot of the issues that Kevin Patullo had that we took issues with, Zac Robinson had. Lack of play calling feel. Lack of play calling sequencing. Being lost as a play caller on third downs. Which brings me to this. Third down rate for Atlanta last year. Think about the talent that they had. Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson. I do like how Zac Robinson was able to coach up Bijan Robinson in a way where this past year he had a breakout year. But an issue for the Falcons and the Eagles in 2025. Unable to move the chains on third downs. How many 3-and-outs did the Eagles have? The most in the NFL. So the Falcons in 2025, 30th in the league in third down conversion rate at 33.3%. The Eagles with Kevin Patullo, 36.7%. Not much better, 24th in the NFL. We'll see what Robinson can do with Baker, and they have some offensive pieces there. But that is an aging roster. The offensive line outside of Tristan Wirfs isn't great. Zac Robinson is not a candidate who I wanted the Eagles to hire. Still to come here on Eagles Now. Motivation for Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni going into next year. Vic Fangio recognized as one of the top assistants in football. Very well deserved right there. But today's Philadelphia Eagles Now is brought to you by Prize Picks. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than with Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And since the big game is right around the corner, that also means it's your last chance to get into the football action before next year. So close the season out right with Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. This is America's #1 fantasy sports app. Make player, team, and culture picks. You can pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stats, and you can win some big-time money. You can also find your community on Prize Picks with the new social feeds feature. You can share Prize Picks with your friends and copy lineups from winners with a single click. Copy lineups you like or use them as inspiration for your own picks. You can even follow Prize Picks partners like us and tail or fade our picks with just one click. 4-pick power play for Championship Sunday. Denver, New England, Seattle, Rams, Cortland Sutton, Stephon Diggs, more than a half rushing or receiving touchdown on the AFC side. On the NFC side, Kenneth Walker, Puka Nacua, more than a half rushing or receiving touchdown. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code CLNS. Get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All right, let's have this conversation here. Looking ahead to 2026, should Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni feel disrespected with what is happening in this Eagles offensive coordinator search? Mike McDaniel, Brian Daboll, the Eagles' top 2 options to replace Kevin Patullo, do not want the Eagles' offensive coordinator job. Kind of a slap in the face for the 1-2 punch at head coach and quarterback for the Birds. But what have McDaniel and Daboll accomplished in the NFL? McDaniel, some splash offensive plays. Daboll, coach of the year in 2022. After that, his Giants teams sucked. What have Hurts and Sirianni accomplished? 5 years together, 5 playoff appearances, 4 straight double-digit win seasons, 2 NFC East titles, and the big one that everybody cares about, 2 Super Bowl appearances and a Lombardi trophy in 2024 when the Eagles shellacked the Kansas City Chiefs and ended their quest for a three-peat. Can this serve as motivation for 2026? Hopefully Hurts and Sirianni can use this as such to adapt, evolve, test themselves offensively, get outside of their comfort zone, improve as a collective offensive unit, and absolutely ball out this upcoming season. Those guys don't want the job, and it's a great opportunity for them if they want to become head coaches again. That's fine. You don't want to come to Philadelphia. You're scared about being in the pressure cooker. The Eagles can succeed without you. Vic Fangio, named an AP Assistant Coach of the Year finalist, meaning he's being recognized as one of the top non-head coaches in the NFL. Rightfully so. The Eagles defense in 2025, #1 in the league in completion rate against, fewest passing touchdowns allowed, 2nd in opponent passer rating, 5th in scoring defense. Some of the analytical numbers also really good. Vic Fangio did this while the Eagles were 30th in team spending. And that is a credit to what Howie Roseman and this front office have done come time for the NFL draft, because the Eagles have been able to draft and develop a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball. And it's a shout out to Vic Fangio for coaching and developing that talent as well. Don't forget to give me a follow on social media. I'm on X, Instagram, TikTok, @Chase_Senior. The platforms are humming. You can also find me on Facebook, Chase Senior Chat Sports. Just additional Eagles content and coverage for you over there.